It shows it's recorded.
Okay, the Planning Commission meeting for the City of Palos Verdes Estates for October 15, 2024 is now in order. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, may we have the roll call, please?
Sure. Commissioner Nendek?
Here.
Commissioner Foster?
Here.
Commissioner Campisi?
Here.
Vice Chairman Lazaro, absent. Chairman Wade?
Here.
Chairman Wade, you have a quorum.
Okay. Welcome, everyone. We have not a great turnout tonight, but we have a number of matters on the agenda, so we will keep busy for sure. Before we start with our agenda tonight, I typically make some remarks regarding both the neighborhood compatibility process and the process that we follow in our hearings. Some of you are frequent attenders, and you've heard these remarks before. Those of you who are newcomers, you're going to hear them for the first time, and our hope is that you kind of digest these thoughts, especially if you're involved in a neighborhood compatibility matter, and also so that you get a good feeling as to exactly what the process is and what you need to do if you intend to speak. So first, as to neighborhood compatibility in our city, the process is intended to be transparent and collaborative among neighbors. It's a process where the applicant of the proposed project meets with affected neighbors to discuss the project. The parties discuss impacts and concerns that the neighbors may have within the parameters of the neighborhood compatibility requirements. And then the applicant considers such feedback and takes what we hope to be reasonable steps to mitigate valid concern. The intent is that all parties, the applicant and neighbors, and at the end of the day, we are all neighbors, will come to the table in a spirit of reasonableness and good faith and be willing to compromise and come to, a practical, reasonable solution. When this happens, the process can move quite quickly and be relatively painless. In the end, our common objective is to preserve the beauty and harmony of the special place that we call home and live together as friends and neighbors. When this doesn't occur, this process can span several commission meetings, and it can be contentious, and that's something that we hope to avoid. We'd like to apply, our goal is to apply the city requirements and guidelines in a manner that is balanced, consistent, fair, and reasonable, and one in which all parties can feel at the end of the day, at the end of the particular item, that they've been heard. They may not necessarily agree with the outcome, but they'll understand, we hope, what the decision is and why it was made. We all need to work together to make this happen. As to the process we'll follow tonight, our process for considering an application has three parts. It begins with a staff report presented to the commission from the city staff, and the commissioners will have an opportunity to ask whatever questions they may have at that time. The second part is that we will then open the meeting on an item, and we call it a public hearing, and the applicant will have an opportunity to present the project, and the applicant will have an initial 5 minutes. Anyone wishing to speak on the item who's not the applicant will have 3 minutes. And at the end, at the conclusion of the public hearing on a given item, the applicant will have an additional 5 minutes in rebuttal. Everyone will speak at the podium. On my right, your left. Please speak into the microphone. Our audio system is not the best, so we want to make sure that we properly hear from the commission perspective your comments and make sure that they're properly recorded. Anyone who wishes to speak, please fill out one of these pink cards at the end of each aisle and pass them forward to Jeffrey, and he'll in turn pass them up to me. And please indicate on the speaker card what item or items you wish to speak on so I can keep everything straight here. When the public hearing is finished, all parties who have wished to speak, have had an opportunity to speak, will close the public hearing and the commission will discuss and decide if possible the matter before us. Okay, I think with that said, I think we're ready to proceed with approval of tonight's agenda. And city staff has advised that the applicant in item 4 has requested a continuance to our next regular meeting on November 19th. So I would therefore suggest that we move item 4 up on the agenda to immediately follow the consent agenda. Do commissioners wish to make any additional changes to tonight's agenda?
No.
Okay, well, hearing none, do we have a motion and second to approve tonight's agenda subject to moving up item 4?
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda, moving up item number 4.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
All right, in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 4-0. We are now at a point on our agenda where we'll entertain communications from the public. And at this time, members of the public are invited to address the commission on matters that are not on tonight's agenda. Under California law, the commission is prohibited from discussing or taking any action on any matter that's not on the agenda unless the matter is deemed to be an emergency under state law or the matter arose subsequent to the posting of the agenda. I have no speaker cards from anyone who wishes to make public comments, so let me ask, does anyone here this evening wish to make public comments?
Actually, mine is more of a public comment than anything on the agenda.
And your name, sir?
Daniel Ford.
Okay, you're not speaking on a particular item, or are you?
Well, it's related.
Well, then, seems,
Related.
yeah.
Okay.
Well, sadly, it's item 7, so you may be with us for a while. You're going to not have the opportunity to speak and run. So I think if it is related to item 7, then we should probably defer your comments until that time.
Okay.
All right. I see no hands or any other indication of anyone having public comments. So we will move on to the consent agenda. We have 2 items on tonight's consent agenda, the minutes from our September 17th, 2024 Planning Commission meeting, and recent administrative approvals by city staff that we routinely review and file. So do commissioners wish to discuss or remove either item from the consent agenda?
I do not.
I have one question on, Cheryl's going to hate this one, a condition, I think, on, yes, it's on continued public hearings, number 3, I think
I'm sorry, I can't hear you, Jenny.
on item number 3 of the Planning Commission actions, condition 22, it says the applicant shall lower the upper finished floor elevation of the residence to match the existing finished floor of the elevation, which is correct. Thereby, I think we needed to have thereby reducing the ridge line by an equal amount. Do we have that anywhere in there?
We have a change in the roof pitch, decreased to 312.
I mean, I think it's implicit, but I worry about it. So I don't know what the right answer is. You guys can decide. But the idea is that we were lowering the floor, so the whole thing lowered by that amount. So
That would be my understanding. Is that the case? Does staff read the condition that way?
That's how we read it.
okay, that's all that matters. I just wanted to make certain so that if anyone questions anything, we're all clear that that's what it is. Perfect, thank you. Then I'm fine with everything.
Okay, any other comments or concerns with items 1 and 2?
No.
All right, do we have a motion and a second to approve?
I'll make a motion to accept the consent agenda.
Okay,
I'll second.
in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Consent agenda is passed. So we will move to continued public hearings, and we have moved up item 4, which is the neighborhood compatibility application for a new single-family residence at 3436 Via La Selva. And Mr. Leach, the architect for the project, did advise the city of his desire to continue the matter to our next regular Planning Commission meeting on November 19th, and I would therefore make a motion to that effect. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
In favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, motion carries. The matter is continued. So we will now move backwards to item 3, which is a neighborhood compatibility application and grading application for a new single-family residence at 4016 Via Larga Vista. And before we ask for the staff report, do commissioners have any ex parte communications or activities pertaining to this item that are not reflected in the record?
I made site visits to 4017 and 4025 Via Larga Vista.
I do not.
I likewise made a visit to the project site.
I made a visit to the project site as well as second time to the property to the right. I believe it's 4012. It looks like that property's not occupied, so
I think it's not.
I was unable to reach anybody there.
I think that's an empty.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, may we have the staff report, please?
Yes, thank you, Chair Wade, members of the Planning Commission, and members of the public. Tonight's presentation is a continued neighborhood compatibility and grading application hearing for a new single-family residence located at 4016 Via Larga Vista. The scope of work, as mentioned prior, is for a new structure of 1,000 square feet or more gross floor area, and grading due to the quantity of cut and fill exceeding 250 cubic yards per the municipal code. This application, or these applications, were last heard at the September meeting. And after discussion, the Planning Commission voted to continue the item to allow the applicant to revise the project based on your conversation. The applicant has since returned with a revised project, and the current application has been revised in a number of ways, all of which are outlined in the staff report, but I'll go over the changes now. The roof pitch of the proposed residence has been reduced from a 6-in-12 to a 4-in-12 pitch. A portion of the front balcony has been removed and replaced with a roof. The home has been lowered 12 inches. Due to the roof pitch and grading, the two highest ridges have been reduced by 2 feet, and the pad elevations changed, but the wall heights have remained the same. Again, the cut and fill for the proposed cut has been, as a result of the changes, the proposed cut has increased to 487 cubic yards. The proposed fill has remained the same at 7 cubic yards. And the proposed maximum building height has decreased to 24.88 feet from an intersecting natural grade elevation of 410. The findings required to approve the application are outlined in staff's report, as is staff's recommendation. This concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions you have for me at this time. Thank you.
So,
Any questions for Jeffrey?
please, I think the proposed maximum ridge height now is it's 436.51, not 435.78.
Yes, 436.51 is the highest ridge. Should be the highest ridge. So that would make
And I think possibly that the height, it says, is 2685, not 2488.
Right, I'm doing the math right now. 436.51 is 410. 26.51?
I think it says on the plans 2685.
Yeah. Okay. Yep, so 436.51, the lowest natural grade is at 410, and so 26.51 is what I'm getting.
So it's about a little over a 2-foot reduction.
Right.
I'm just reading it off his plans. So
Right.
in any case, he did go down 2 feet or so.
Right.
Jeffrey, just a confirmation here. It shows it's 4,433 square feet of space. That's the same as it was last time. It's not
That's
a
right.
reduction, right?
That's right.
Okay, any other questions for Jeffrey?
No.
Hearing none, we will open the public hearing, and Mr. Johnson can have his first 5 minutes.
If you guys can see it, I can start if you want. Good? Okay. Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Keith Johnson with Pritzcat & Johnson Architects. Thank you for taking the time to review this revised application. As mentioned last month, we had positive feedback at the neighbor meeting, and I have not received, and I believe the city has not received any concerns from the neighbors regarding the revisions. Commissioner Nendek couldn't confirm to me which neighbor thought the project was too big, and I didn't think it was appropriate to go door to door to figure it out, since they have my contact information and could reach out to me if they had any additional concerns. Because they haven't contacted me, I am assuming they're okay with the project as submitted, and I am hoping that you'll be able to approve the project tonight, as I feel significant changes have been made that make this new home compatible with the neighborhood. Next slide. At last month's hearing, most of the objectives of the neighborhood compatibility ordinance seemed to be met as privacy, views, and natural amenities were addressed. The commissions had concerns regarding the size, overall height, and the impact from the street due to the contemporary steep gable design. Next slide. Because the original contemporary European design with the steep gable seemed to make the house appear looming from the street, all the commissioners asked for the pitch of the roof to be reduced. Because a lower pitch roof wouldn't go with the aesthetic of the contemporary design we were trying to achieve, the client compromised to go to a more traditional Spanish-style home. The roof pitch was reduced from a 6-12 pitch to a 4-12 pitch. Per Commissioner Campese's suggestion to reduce the height even further, we lowered the house into the ground an additional 12 inches. These changes reduced the overall height by 2 feet. The original design had a continuous balcony along the front of the house as indicated by the blue line in this slide. While not specifically requested, I decided to remove a large portion of that balcony over the entry and bedroom to help with the massing and an impact from the street. Instead of the balcony, there is a 1-story roof area which emphasizes the articulation in the front facade to create interest and soften the look from the street. Next slide. Last month I used this slide and it showed that our ridgeline was in line with the 2 adjacent 2-story homes. With the changes that have been made, we are now below that line and we are 1 foot lower in height than the downslope neighbor. We maintained the larger setback as originally designed on the west side where the 1-story house is located, and along with that and the 2-foot reduction in height, it helps the 1-story neighbor not to feel as boxed in temporarily by the 2-story houses until they decide to build their own 2-story home in this transitional neighborhood. If you have any questions about these changes, I'd be happy to answer them at this time. Otherwise, I'll address the square footage concerns the commission had during my next part of the presentation.
Questions for Keith? I just have one. You didn't change the silhouette, did you?
It was changed, yeah.
It was. Okay.
Mr. Johnson, thank you for making these changes. The middle note there, larger setback on the 1-story side. Can you just describe the difference between last month and this month of that setback?
That's the same. There's the 1/3, 2/3 that you can split it. The 1/3 is on the 2-story side. The 2/3 is on the 1-story side.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Johnson? Okay. I do not have any other speaker cards. I'm sorry?
I'll just use my next 5 minutes if there's no one else here.
Okay, there's no one else here to speak on the item. So is that it?
Nope, I've got more. Next slide, please. Last month, there were concerns on the overall square footage of the project. However, I think reducing the square footage solves a problem that doesn't exist. If I was to reduce the square footage, it would basically just come off the back of the house or somewhere in the middle. So as you can see from the somewhat passive-aggressive slide, the front elevation from the street really is going to be unchanged by the square footage of the house. I feel a compromise to the style, the change to the roof pitch, sinking the house in the ground, reducing the amount of the balcony, softening the elevation, and reducing the overall height contribute more to the compatibility of the structure than reducing the square footage to meet some metric on a chart. Next slide. The next series of slides are on homes on Largo Vista and Picket Post. These are all similar to what I am proposing and are within the radius. They are two-story homes and they are built from setback to setback. Next slide. Some have wide front balconies and some have balconies over garages. Some are designed with a similar articulation to the facade as I am doing by pushing one element in front of another. Some have flat two-story volumes and some have one-story elements with roof coverings to soften the elevation. A lot of these design considerations are incorporated into what I have designed. Next slide. And you know what else these 9 homes have in common besides being 2 stories and having similar design features? You couldn't tell me which ones are over 0.4 FAR and which ones are under without having the matrix that Jeffrey includes in the staff report for you. The reason you can't tell is because they've been designed in a way that works for the neighborhood and you can't see what is happening behind the facade or underneath the home. Using 0.4 FAR as some sort of limit, which again has never been published as a guideline and never been discussed in a public hearing, does not make much sense when there are no neighbor complaints and the eye test is saying that the project is compatible. Next slide. The findings for the neighborhood compatibility have been met. The natural slope of the land has been considered. Balcony and window designs have been considered to deal with privacy. Private talks between neighbors have been good regarding the privacy, screening, and property line fences. The project does not interfere with any existing views. Even though the home is bigger than the surrounding homes, with the changes to the massing the commission requested in the way I've designed the home, the bulkiness and height have been reduced and it passes the eye test. The home will feel compatible with the neighborhood character as it utilizes similar design features to other two-story homes that are built from setback to setback and is now a more traditional design that is predominant in the neighborhood. I look forward to your approval on this project tonight, but I do have one more request that I brought up last month. Next slide. Number 5 is already a standard condition. Number 28 seems to imply that we can't do anything in easements. This is not true. In HOA easements, we have always been allowed to do hardscape walls and fences. For example, if I were required to move the walls out of the easement, there would not be enough clearance for the fire department access along the east property line. There is a utility easement in the rear yard, and we have not shown any walls in that easement. I'm not sure why this condition needs to be here, and it will just complicate the approval process later. I would ask that number 28 be removed since number 5 basically says the same thing but is worded better and allows for review and approval by the PVHA who is in control of that easement on the side yard. If you have any other questions, I'd be happy to answer them at this time.
I have a question. Mr. Johnson, one of my major concerns is the property to the right of the property. I think it's 14. Since there's nobody there to object to privacy issues and other things, there's nobody to speak to that. But I'm looking at the plans, and there's 6 windows on, I believe, the west side of the property that will overlook that property. Can you tell me on the second floor how far those windows are from the floor?
If you go to slide, that's the 2 more slides, Jeffrey, I think I have a slide from last time showing that it was like 4'10" off the ground.
Okay.
It was the next one after the last one, but it's 4'10" off the ground. Keep going. 2 down, or sorry. It's 4'10". It's fine. Yeah.
Bob, you were asking about these second-story windows?
Yeah,
So they're 4'10" from the second finished floor?
that's what he's saying.
Yeah. And they're mostly in bathrooms and on bed walls where there'd be furniture in front of it, so it'd be, even with the 5-foot height, it's still even hard to look out of it as well.
That property is set back a little bit, so I think the windows towards the street are not as much of a problem as the ones in the back. But we don't know in the future where that property's going to be located.
I imagine if no one's there now, it's going to be developed in the future, too.
Okay, other questions for Keith? Okay, hearing none, we'll conclude the public hearing and we'll discuss the matter. Yeah, that's what I said.
Oh, I thought you said conclude.
Well, close the public hearing portion. Okay. Anybody want to start?
I can. As I said, I made site visits. I did not get back with the email that I was sent because I was advised previously that I'm not to tell people what was said in the meetings. It can be construed as ex parte, as it has been before, so I let staff know. So I appreciate the architect reducing the pitch of the roof, lowering the ridge line, and keeping it more with neighborhood character. I think that was a great thing. The use of the lot seems reasonable to me. As the intensity of the hardscape, it's fine. As you saw the conditions, we don't have the right to approve or disapprove things in the easement unless we feel that it's too much for the property, because I don't feel like there's too much going on hardscape. You know, that's not up to me one way or the other. That's up to the PVHA or the city building department. I am disappointed that the FAR was not reduced as we asked last month. I still feel the home is too large for the neighborhood, with a FAR of 43.8 and at 165% of the average size. I hear what you're saying, that you've never heard FAR before, but I actually took the time to go back and listen to old meetings that a lot of people have been at, and FAR has been discussed time and time again. It's written in reports, and it's a reason why it's on the neighborhood comparison chart. It's not out of the blue. It's been on neighborhood comparison charts for as long as I can remember. When we did our home in 2000, I believe it was on there. So what I tried to do is get a sense of what was right around, because, I mean, I think there's a couple other FARs that are larger, a couple other homes, but the majority of the homes aren't. So 420, which is next door, which is being used to say it's a comparison, that's got a FAR of 36.7, and the lot size is pretty close. Let me see what your lot size is. 89, yeah, and that was 8872. So the one on the other side is 1 story. That's at 18.4% FAR and 1704. The other larger one on this street, 4032, I'm sorry, is 3,423 square feet at 39% FAR, and 4008 is 3597 at 37.5 FAR. So the 43.8, the FAR has been talked about for years and years. I think it has to come down some. It's big, so that's my opinion.
I appreciate the things that the architect have done with regards to the lowering of the ridge line and the setting of the property into the ground a little bit further. And I think that the facade on the front of the property is okay. My concern is a little bit what Janine was talking about, and that is the 165% of the neighborhood. And my concern is the neighbor that's not here at the table right now. And I think the size of the property, although the mass of the front, I think is okay. It's the mass of the property from the neighbor that's not there. And therefore, I think my concern is, again, the overall square footage and size.
Okay, well, I'll add some comments here. When we considered the application last month, I had two concerns: the size of the project, it being the third largest home of 50 within 300 feet at 165%, as has been discussed. And the second concern I had was the height of the house at almost 29 feet. It just seemed to loom over the street and the surrounding one-story homes. I think I'm still concerned about the size of the proposed home, but as I said last month, I think I can reluctantly live with the size in the absence of any objections by neighbors. I also note that on the floor area comparison, we have a number of properties. We don't have many, but there's a number of the properties within 300 feet. There's 50 properties, and I'm counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 homes with FARs over 40%. So this is, I mean, it's a guideline. It's not a hard and fast rule. And I think at 43%, what are we going to do, take 200 square feet out of the house? That just seems a little silly to me. With regard to the building height and the looming nature of the structure, I'm pretty satisfied that the 2-foot reduction in the two highest ridges, the front gables, which were the most problematic. It's where you really saw the height issue. The 2-foot reduction from lowering the roof pitch and the additional grading, I think that addresses my concern. I think the removal of a large portion of the front balcony also addresses the looming nature of the massing impact in the front of the house. So I'm reluctant to require the applicant to reduce square footage. Again, in the absence, I know the numbers are high, but I think there's some precedent for higher numbers here, and there's a lack of objection by neighbors. And I just don't feel like it's my place to substitute my judgment for the lack of objection of others. So those are my thoughts.
Chairman, my only concern with regards to lack of comment from the neighbors is we have an absent neighbor. If there was somebody there, would they have an objection? And that's the party that's most impacted.
Well, we're assuming that they'll have had an objection. That is a property. Someone should be, if that applicant is. I'm sorry?
It's owned by the Lazaro
Yeah,
family.
I'm aware of that.
Okay.
The issue is that the code doesn't say that we're only supposed to listen to neighbors.
No, I understand
The
that.
code is so that there's parameters and there's a sense of what's going on. So great, it'd be great to be at 40%. I don't think that's realistic, but this is really, it's at 44%. It's 43.8. So I think it's just bordering up there a little bit too high for me. Ideally, 40%. I don't think that's realistic in this case. But I think if, 100, 150 came off of it, I'd be feeling more comfortable. That's just my opinion.
I'm just not sure that if we ask for that kind of reduction, I think, let me back up and say, I agree. This is not a vote of the neighborhood as to what their feeling is. And the lack of objection doesn't drive the matter, but it is a factor, in my opinion. If neighbors don't object to it, then I can only construe that as a feeling that they're not dissatisfied. And I think the architect has shown us a number of homes in the area that have roughly the same height and appearance. So my take is it's not a real issue. And when you look at some of the other floor area ratios and you see higher ones.
No, I hear what you're saying. I mean, I see on Pick-a-Post, there's a lot of higher ones. But I do have people who say to me, we thought that's your job, that we're not supposed to have to come, that you have some parameters you're supposed to work within. So that's where I have a difficult time, that, like people say, if you read code, it says if you write a letter or you go in front, it's equal, it doesn't matter. But then everyone gets up here and says, well, no one's here to speak. But if someone, and sometimes there's been this time there's not, I'm not saying that there's been a letter, how do we choose? Code is even. So I think that's where I have a hard time. Have the neighbors, some of them say, yes, this is very big. You know what I mean? Do we want to die on every hill with our neighbors? No, we don't want to. What's your job? So that's where I get caught in all of this.
Yeah, I have a couple thoughts. I think Commissioner Foster, I get your point about the neighbor to the west being absent, but to me, that tells me they're probably going to be in front of us in the next 2 years with an application because that home is abandoned and in severe distress. So they had a chance. They were notified. So and then if you look to the house to the east, I believe it's the Schuckerts. When I spoke to them last month, they were happy to see that this home was being proposed for renovation. They wanted to see the neighborhood improved. Is the home big? It is on the larger side, and I take that into consideration. I do appreciate, Mr. Johnson, you making changes so that the curb appeal, the front of the home, has reduced those items and those measures by taking off the balcony, which I think reduces the massing and the size of it. I'm with Chair Wade. I think this home meets the standards for neighborhood compatibility based on what we are here for. Is it on the larger end? Yes, but from the street, I believe it fits the neighborhood. 100, 150 or 200 square feet, I don't think we would even notice. He's going to take it off the back, like he said. He's not going to shave the front right corner, that master bedroom, or that main room. No, it's going to come off the back. So who is that going to help? Somebody who can't see it from the street that's to the south. So I think, in the absence of neighbors here opposing, I think that this meets the standards, and I'm ready to approve it. But I think we're deadlocked, so can't call the fifth guy. He would have to recuse.
No, I think, I am sensitive to what Commissioner Nendick and Commissioner Foster have said about the size of the home, and I think we all agree that it is a large home. And that was one of my first impressions when I looked at the house at the hearing, before the hearing last month. And I agree that the floor area ratio is something to pay attention to, but in my view, it's not a requirement, it's a flag. And it's a red light. So when I see anything in excess of 40% or above, that's a red light to look at it. And that's what I think we've done. We've looked at it. And I think while I still have some concerns about it, I just cannot see that, pulling square footage out of the back of the house is going to make a difference other than, perhaps it lowers, the floor area ratio. So we've got a statistical correction, and I don't think that's what we're here for.
Yeah, if there were 3 neighbors lined up angry about this still on the
that'd be a
second
different
submittal, I
matter.
think that's a different story. But because the neighbors that we spoke to even last month, they were fine with it, I think this is an approvable project.
Well, and I did likewise go next door to the neighbor on the left-hand side as you're facing the home.
Yep.
And the lady there was ecstatic about the project. She was happy that something constructive was being done with a property that's long in the tooth and really needs to be rehabbed for the appearance of the neighborhood. And she was a little bit concerned about the height of the house, and I think we've addressed that. And that's the only neighborhood concern that I've heard. So I think we are at a 2-2 vote, which would immediately mean that in a case of a tie, it goes to City Council if we were to vote on this. So I will.
Unless they're reconsidering based on the conversation.
Correct.
Mr. Foster?
I mean, I can see your argument. And I think we're setting a precedent for the street, but there is precedent on the street already.
I think there's precedent on pick-a-post. I'm sorry. On pick-a-post, there's precedent, I think.
Yeah.
But then I don't see there's precedent on this street. It's a hard one. I'm not saying it's easy.
Yeah,
I'm very uncomfortable, and we keep getting this kind of thing, and then we get comments from neighbors about, what are you guys doing? And so it's a very difficult situation.
You know what this reminds me of, though? I'm reminded of the property, and I can't think of the street address, but I can think of the street, and it was Via Pacheco. And there was the house on the corner that was quite large, right next to a previously built two-story that's quite large.
Right.
And I think we struggle with that one, too. But eventually, the outcome was the neighbor next door, which is like the Schukerts in this case, did not object to the height of the house. There were some issues regarding the wall separating the property and some of the vegetation, but other than that, they were in support of it. So I think we have a parallel situation here.
I mean, if he came back next month with 173 square feet less and it's in the back, is that going to satisfy you?
Wherever it is, I think 150, I'd be satisfied. I just think that we have these, and I hear what you're
The
saying.
house won't look different, though.
It's like-
Well, it actually will,
it's like
because you
taking out
see
a
the mass.
bathroom.
Okay, I'm saying you see the mass from the house. You don't only look at a house from the front. You look from the sides, you look from different angles. So it's just a hard thing because there's a reason why some of these things were stated and why we talk about them. And I get what you're saying, that no one's here complaining. I've been out there. People are still saying they feel it's large, but, they don't want to get in fights about it, and they don't want to, they have a right to say what they think. And it's a difficult situation because everyone wants it redone, and the changes with the height, I think, are fabulous. I think I just have a hard time because I am probably more mathematical, and I know how this place, has a fair amount of volume because the plate heights, it's not like it's at this square footage with 8-foot plate heights, okay? So you got more volume, you've got different things going on, so I hear what you're saying, I have a hard time.
Could I clarify, are you saying that there's neighbors that are opposed, but they did not want to speak up?
They're saying, no, they're not saying they're opposed because they want it done, but they do feel it's very large for the neighborhood. So if that's what I'm hearing each time I'm out there, but they want it done.
But are any of them in the audience today?
No,
or
but that
did we
doesn't matter.
receive any writing? Well, that's the process, though. Like,
No, well, you're right.
Be the messenger of the neighborhood.
Okay.
You can talk to them, but I don't think.
That's fine, but I have the right to say what I've heard, to have an opinion. So I agree with you
Right.
very much, so.
But here's what I'm also thinking, is that I think we can all agree that the house next door is probably at some point going to be torn down and rebuilt. But all we're doing is setting up that precedent for that house to be 165% of the neighborhood. And so we'll just keep ratcheting this thing up. Where if it came back into more what the norm is, which is about 150% of the neighborhood or somewhere closer to the FA, then I think we're not setting ourselves up for the next project. I don't know, just a thought.
No, because if you're realistic, from when neighborhood compatibility started, okay, to now, houses have got considerably larger. So these percentages have gotten smaller, really, over time, because you're comparing to larger homes. So there's a point of where you're at where you're getting to where you're 100%. Is that where we want to be? I don't know the answer. I mean, we're supposed to do it relative to the homes around. We're supposed to do it relative to the lots that are the same size. I think there's all different ways to look at it. I don't think anyone's 100% right or wrong.
Well, if you look at the neighborhood compatibility sheet, you can see that some of these houses with the high floor area ratios for the size of their lots some of them are quite old. Back in the 49 is one of them, and 1949, and two were in 1994 and 95. And there have been homes built subsequent to then that have lower floor area ratios. So I don't necessarily think that just because you approve a larger home in this case, that it necessarily means that the one next door or the next one's going to propose of this size. There are a lot of factors that go into it, as we know. But I think at the end of the day, I sometimes try to put on the lens of why should we not approve this house? Mm-hmm. And they've addressed the major concern that I think that anybody expressed in the neighborhood and that all of us felt, and that was the height. I think that's been addressed. by taking basically the square floor area of a bathroom out is, in my opinion, just inappropriate. I mean, I think this house is well-designed. It's a beautiful, attractive home for the area, and I think we shouldn't stand on the floor area ratio as saying that we should take out the size of a bathroom before we approve it.
I agree. I mean, I think taking out 150 feet is not going to make a big difference. It's not going to make a hell of a lot of difference.
So we still at tie?
Well, I guess we need to make a motion to find out.
I guess we can.
I think I could go.
Chairman Wade, also address condition number 28 that Mr. Johnson requested that it be
Well, part of my
deleted.
concern is that's a public works condition. I understand that there's an inconsistency there, and I think the staff needs to resolve that. And I don't know that that's a matter that the commission should be the arbitrator or the mediator of what the planning department's saying and what Public Works is deciding. So I hate to say you might be faced with an inconsistency here, but I think that's the outcome. And I, for one, am not going to suggest that one clause prevail over the other one. I think it needs to be resolved by the two departments.
I think if you're going to make a motion, you need to consider making a condition about that back hedge that on this thing says it's supposed to be, per the neighbors, a certain height,
I don't remember what that was, to be
10
honest.
feet above neighbor's covered patio, it says.
What are you talking? Privacy hedge, 10 feet.
It's in the cloud.
Yeah. The cloud that says new privacy hedge, elevation 434.8, 10 feet above neighbor's covered patio at 4017 via picket post.
Okay.
Is that the only condition, or that, I mean,
I would add a condition that we commonly require, and that is that there be no minor modifications or other administrative actions that would result in increasing the roof ridges, approved roof ridges or height of the house.
Yeah, you usually say the structure.
Structure.
Yeah, if they,
our new terminology.
I'm
Well,
not
just
sure
because
if we go to envelope, sometimes
Yeah, it gets
that's too
difficult.
broad.
But if you talk about just a top bridge, you don't want the wings going up. That's the reason why they say it.
Okay. Well, I'm prepared to make a motion that we approve this project, which is NC-011-24 with a grading application pertaining to 4016 Via Larga Vista as revised and presented to us this evening with the condition that there be a new, that the privacy hedge elevation 434.8, 10 feet above the neighbor's covered patio at 4017 via picket post, that be required and be a condition of approval, and that also there be no minor modifications or other administrative actions that would result in increasing the the roof ridges or height of the house. And you wanted to condition that slightly differently. What terms would you use?
The envelope of the structures, I think Cheryl, what's usually used? Yeah.
Okay. All right. That's by motion.
I'll second that.
All right. Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye. Opposed, nay.
I'm aye.
You're aye?
We got to do it.
So it's 3-1.
So motion carries 3-1.
Aye, yeah, that's fine. That.
Okay. Congratulations, Keith. All right. Now, we'll move to item 5, which is a miscellaneous application for as-built walls and fences exceeding 42 inches in the front setback adjacent to the street at 1657 via Arepa. And as in the last case, I will ask whether commissioners have any ex parte communications or activities pertaining to this item that are not reflected in the record.
I'll go first. I visited the property and I spoke with the neighbor next door to the east, which is, sorry, let me get the address. 1661 Via Ariba.
Okay, I likewise visited the property and the street area along Via Ariba, the 1600 blocks and 1700 block and down to Montemar.
I visited the property as well, but did not speak to anyone.
I visited the property, but no one was there when I tried to speak.
Okay, we will call for the staff report then.
Thank you, Chair Wade, members of the Planning Commission, and members of the public. Tonight's presentation is for a miscellaneous application for as-built walls and fences exceeding 42 inches in the setback adjacent to the street located at 1657 Via Ariba. The application is for a 6-foot tall wall with pilasters and a driveway gate along the south property line, and then a 6-foot tall wrought iron fence along the west side yard within the front yard setback. It's as-built because it exists now. The wall and fence was built without planning approval, and so for those of you who visited the site, you most likely saw the fence and wall there. And so the applicant has submitted a miscellaneous application to get approval for that as-built condition. This concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions you have for me at this time. Thank you.
Okay, questions for Jeffrey?
So Jeffrey, what was approved was actually, the wall was supposed to be at 103.15, and just around the patio part, not across the driveway and things, is that correct?
That's right. So there was no driveway gate, and there was
Right.
no wall. Oh, I'm sorry.
So it says, the original plan said bottom of the wall across the front of the patio area at the property line was 101.25, and then the top of the wall was 103.15, and it went over to where the stairs were. And the side wall was the one closest to the driveway was supposed to be 100.05. On both sides, it was supposed to be 100.5.
Right.
Is that what you see?
That's what I see, but I believe in the original plan, there was no wrought iron fence that encroached into that front yard setback. It was just a wall.
Correct.
I'm sorry. So the wrought iron fence along the west property line that is being shown now was not on the original plan.
Right, it was just the wall to 101.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Mr. Graham, I have a question for you. When I
Yes.
visited the property, and I think this project came before the Planning Commission before my time. I don't
Yes.
know. So when you're standing at the street level, obviously the fence is not 6 feet, but when you go into the patio, it's dug out, and so that's where the 6-foot height comes from, right?
Well, yeah, it's from, I think it's from adjacent natural grade, and so it's really 5 feet from the existing grade. I think there's a difference of a foot between the natural and existing grade.
Okay.
And
It's
so-
always meant to be measured from, in a setback from natural or existing, whichever is lower.
Right.
Lower, yeah.
Yep.
So when was this project before the Planning Commission?
2019, May 21st, 2019.
It's before my time.
Mine as well.
can't
That's why I pulled it up. That's right. That's right. Well, it's just one of those things that you're trying to figure out exactly what went on, and let's see what happened.
Okay, any other
Thank you.
questions for Jeffrey? All right, I have no speaker cards from anyone on this issue. Is anyone here to speak on this item tonight? No?
The applicant's here, but
Okay. Then, if there are no public comments, we will close the public hearing and we will discuss the matter before us.
I'll start. I mean, one thing I did notice, and again, I don't know the history of this or why this even happened, but looking at the surrounding neighbors, these walls and fences are lower than other existing walls at the adjacent properties. That was just what I observed, and so sort of my first reaction was, okay, these are not imposing walls that are higher than what's already out there, and I'm not sure how that plays into all this, but that's just my observation.
I saw the same thing. I think that the issue becomes, I think it fails the preponderance test, but it's an unusual case because it has a wall on either side of it.
Right.
Well, that's interesting because, again, I think we're wrestling with this November 18th, 2003 policy statement. And there's an issue as to whether or not it should be followed. And I guess in the absence of any city council direction that it should not be followed, I think it should be followed. And that policy states, in pertinent part, that if the neighborhood has a preponderance of fences with pilasters in the front yard setback, then the planning commission may allow similar improvements in the front yard setback. So a couple of the issues are, how do you define the neighborhood? And when I looked at this, there are actually two separate situations. You've got the properties on the south side of Villa Riba, which sit up. You've got the properties on the north side. And if you consider, and they're dramatically different. I mean, my sense was you need to look at the neighborhood in terms of what side of the street are you on almost. And if you do, you even do the numerical count, which I did, and I looked at all the way from on Villa Riba on the north side between Villa Lazo and Mexico Place, which is the 1600 block, including 708 Mexico Place. There are 10 homes, and 9 of which have walls and or fences and gates in the front setback. If you go down to the 1700 block, you pick up another 50% of the homes down there have walls and or fences and gates. So my view is, I'm looking at that kind of a unique situation, and I'm defining my definition of the neighborhood as what's on the north side of Villa Riba. And there's a preponderance, if that's your definition of neighborhood, which it is, in my case it is, you meet the preponderance test, so.
It's an interesting thing, though. Were all those ones above the 3.5 that's allowed? Because that's where I got caught. But some of them are definitely at the 3.5 and some
Yeah,
are
some are
taller.
short.